The Horla, Part 2 of 3, by Guy de Maupassant. July 12, Paris. I must have lost my head during the last few days. I must be the plaything of my enervated imagination, unless I am really a somnambulist, or I have been brought under the power of one of those influences, hypnotic suggestion, for example, which are known to exist, but have hitherto been inexplicable. In any case, my mental state bordered on madness, and 24 hours of Paris sufficed to restore me to my equilibrium. Yesterday, after doing some business and paying some visits, which instilled fresh and invigorating mental air into me, I wound up my evening at the Théâtre Français. A drama by Alexandre Dumas the Younger was being acted, and his brilliant and powerful play completed my cure. Certainly solitude is dangerous for active minds. We need men who can think and can talk around us. When we are alone for a long time, we people space with phantoms. I returned along the boulevards to my hotel in excellent spirits. Amid the jostling of the crowd, I thought, not without irony, of my terrors and surmises of the previous week, because I believed, yes, I believed, that an invisible being lived beneath my roof. How weak our mind is! How quickly it is terrified and unbalanced as soon as we are confronted with a small, incomprehensible fact. Instead of dismissing the problem with, "We do not understand because we cannot find the cause," we immediately imagine terrible mysteries and supernatural powers. July 14. Fate of the Republic. I walked through the streets, and the crackers and flags amused me like a child. Still, it is very foolish to make merry on a set date by government decree. People are like a flock of sheep, now steadily patient, now in ferocious revolt. Say to it, amuse yourself, and it amuses itself. Say to it, go and fight with your neighbor, and it goes and fights. Say to it, vote for the emperor, and it votes for the emperor. Then say to it, vote for the republic, and it votes for the republic. Those who direct it are stupid too, but instead of obeying men, they obey principles, a course which can only be foolish, ineffective, and false, for the very reason that principles are ideas which are considered as certain and unchangeable, whereas in this world one is certain of nothing, since light is an illusion and noise is deception. July 16. I saw some things yesterday that troubled me very much. I was dining at my cousin's, Madame Sable, whose husband is colonel of the 76th Chasseurs à la Marche. There were 2 young women there, one of whom had married a medical man, Dr. Parent, who devotes himself a great deal to nervous disease and to the extraordinary manifestations which just now experiments in hypnotism and suggestion are producing. He related to us at some length the enormous results obtained by English scientists and the doctors of the medical school at Nancy, and the facts which he adduced appeared to me so strange that I declared that I was altogether incredulous. "We are," he declared, "on the point of discovering one of the most important secrets of nature. I mean to say, one of its most important secrets on this earth. For assuredly there are some up in the stars yonder of a different kind of importance. Ever since man has thought, since he has been able to express and write down his thoughts, he has felt himself close to a mystery which is impenetrable to his coarse and imperfect senses, and he endeavors to supplement the feeble penetration of his organs by the efforts of his intellect. As long as that intellect remained in its elementary stage, this intercourse with invisible spirits assumed forms which were commonplace, though terrifying. Thence sprang the popular belief in the supernatural, the legends of wandering spirits, of fairies, of gnomes, of ghosts. I might even say the conception of God. For our ideas of the workman-creator, from whatever religion they may have come down to us, are certainly the most mediocre, the stupidest, and the most unacceptable inventions that ever sprang from the frightened brain of any human creature. Nothing is truer than what Voltaire says. If God made man in his own image, man has certainly paid him back again. But for rather more than a century, men seem to have had a presentiment of something new. Mesmer and some others have put us on an unexpected track, and within the last 2 or 3 years especially, we have arrived at results really surprising." My cousin, who was also very incredulous, smiled, and Dr. Parent said to her, "Would you like me to try and send you to sleep, madam?" "Yes, certainly." She sat down in an easy chair, and he began to look at her fixedly, as if to fascinate her. I suddenly felt myself somewhat decomposed. My heart beat rapidly, and I had a choking feeling in my throat. I saw that Madame Sable's eyes were growing heavy, her mouth twitched, and her bosom heaved. And at the end of 10 minutes, she was asleep. "Go behind her," the doctor said to me. So I took a seat behind her. He put a visiting card into her hands and said to her, "This is a looking-glass. What do you see in it?" She replied, "I see my cousin." "What is he doing?" "He is twisting his mustache." "And now?" "He is taking a photograph out of his pocket." "Whose photograph is it?" "His own." That was true, for the photograph had been given me that same evening at the hotel. "What is his attitude in this portrait?" "He is standing up with his hat in his hand." She saw these things in that card, in that piece of white pasteboard, as if she had seen them in the looking-glass. The young women were frightened, and exclaimed, "That is quite enough, quite enough." But the doctor said to her authoritatively, "You will get up at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Then you will go and call on your cousin at this hotel and ask him to lend you the 5,000 francs which your husband asks of you, and which he will ask for when he sets out on his coming journey." Then he woke her up. On returning to my hotel, I thought over this curious séance, and I was assailed by doubts. Not as to my cousin's absolute and undoubted good faith, for I had known her as well as if she had been my own sister, ever since she was a child, but as to a possible trick on the doctor's part. Had not he, perhaps, kept a glass hidden in his hand, which he showed to the young woman in her sleep at the same time as he did the card? Professional conjurers do things which are just as singular. However, I went to bed, and this morning at about 8:30, I was awakened by my footman, who said to me, "Madame Sable has asked to see you immediately, monsieur." I dressed hastily and went to her. She sat down in some agitation, with her eyes on the floor, and without raising her veil said to me, "My dear cousin, I am going to ask a great favor of you." "What is it, cousin?" "I do not like to tell you, and yet I must. I am in absolute want of 5,000 francs. "What? You?" "Yes, I, or rather my husband, who has asked me to procure them for him." I was so stupefied that I hesitated to answer. I asked myself whether she had not really been making fun of me with Dr. Parent, if it were not merely a very well-acted farce which had been got up beforehand. On looking at her attentively, however, my doubts disappeared. She was trembling with grief, so painful was this step to her, and I was sure that her throat was full of sobs. I knew that she was very rich, and so I continued, "What? Has not your husband 5,000 francs at his disposal? Come, think. Are you sure that he commissioned you to ask for them?" She hesitated for a few seconds, as if she were making a great effort to search her memory, and then she replied, Yes, I am quite sure of it." "He has written to you?" She hesitated again and reflected, and I guessed the torture of her thoughts. She did not know. She only knew that she was to borrow 5,000 francs of me for her husband. So she told a lie. "Yes, he has written to me." "When, pray?" "You did not mention it to me yesterday." "I received his letter this morning." "Can you show it to me?" No, it contained private matters, things too personal to ourselves. I burned it." "So your husband runs into debt." She hesitated again, and then murmured, "I do not know." Thereupon I said bluntly, "I have not 5,000 francs at my disposal at this moment, my dear cousin." She uttered a cry, as if she were in pain, and said, "Oh, oh, I beseech you to get them for me." She got excited and clasped her hands as if she were praying to me. I heard her voice change its tone. She wept and sobbed, harassed and dominated by the irresistible order that she was receiving. Oh, I beg you to. If you knew what I am suffering, I want them today." I had pity on her. "You shall have them by and by, I swear to you." "Oh, thank you, how kind you are." I continued, "Do you remember what took place at your house last night?" "Yes." "Do you remember that Dr. Parent sent you to sleep?" "Yes." "Oh, very well then. He ordered you to come to me this morning to borrow 5,000 francs, and at this moment you are obeying that suggestion." She considered for a few moments, and then replied, "But as it is my husband who wants them—" For a whole hour I tried to convince her, but could not succeed, and when she had gone I went to the doctor. He was just going out, and he listened to me with a smile and said, "Do you believe now?" "Yes, I cannot help it." "Let us go to your cousin's." She was already resting on a couch, overcome with fatigue. The doctor felt her pulse, looked at her for some time with one hand raised toward her eyes, which she closed by degrees under the irresistible power of this magnetic influence. When she was asleep, he said, "Your husband does not require the 5,000 francs any longer. You must, therefore, forget that you asked your cousin to lend them to you, and if he speaks to you about it, you will not understand him." Then he woke her up, and I took out a pocketbook and said, "Here is what you asked me for this morning, my dear cousin." But she was so surprised that I did not venture to persist. Nevertheless, I tried to recall the circumstance to her, but she denied it vigorously, thought that I was making fun of her, and in the end, very nearly lost her temper. There, I have just come back, and I have not been able to eat any lunch, for this experiment has altogether upset me. July 19. Many people to whom I have told the adventure have laughed at me. I no longer know what to think. The wise man says, perhaps. July 21. I dined at Bougival, and then I spent the evening at a boatman's ball. Decidedly, everything depends on place and surroundings. It would be the height of folly to believe in the supernatural on the Île de la Grenouille, but on the top of Mont Saint-Michel or in India, we are terribly under the influence of our surroundings. I shall return home next week. July 30. I came back to my own house yesterday. Everything is going on well. August 2. Nothing fresh. It is splendid weather, and I spend my days in watching the Seine flow past. August 4. Quarrels among my servants. They declare that the glasses are broken in the cupboards at night. The footman accuses the cook, she accuses the needlewoman, and the latter accuses the other two. Who is the culprit? It would take a clever person to tell. August 6. This time I am not mad. I have seen. I can doubt no longer I have seen it. I was walking at 2 o'clock among my rose trees, in the full sunlight, in the walk bordered by autumn roses which are beginning to fall. As I stopped to look at a Géant de Béthia, which had 3 splendid blooms, I distinctly saw the stalk of one of the roses bend close to me, as if an invisible hand had bent it, and then break, as if that hand had picked it. Then the flower raised itself, following the curve which a hand would have described in carrying it toward a mouth, and remained suspended in the transparent air, alone and motionless, a terrible red spot, 3 yards from my eyes. In desperation, I rushed at it to take it. I found nothing. It had disappeared. Then I was seized with furious rage against myself, for it is not wholesome for a reasonable and serious man to have such hallucinations. But was it a hallucination? I turned to look for the stalk, and I found it immediately under the bush, freshly broken, between the 2 other roses which remained on the branch. I returned home then with a much disturbed mind, for I am certain now, certain as I am of the alternation of day and night, that there exists close to me an invisible being who lives on milk and on water, who can touch objects, take them, and change their places, who is, consequently, endowed with a material nature, although imperceptible to sense, and who lives as I do, under my roof. August 7. I slept tranquilly. He drank the water out of my decanter, but did not disturb my sleep. I ask myself whether I am mad. As I was walking just now in the sun by the riverside, doubts as to my own sanity arose in me. Not vague doubts, such as I have had hitherto, but precise and absolute doubts. I have seen mad people, and I have known some who are quite intelligent, lucid, even clear-sighted in every concern of life, except on one point. They could speak clearly, readily, profoundly on everything, till their thoughts were caught in the breakers of their delusions and went to pieces there, where dispersed and swamped in that furious and terrible sea of fogs and squalls which is called madness. I certainly should think that I was mad, absolutely mad, if I were not conscious that I knew my state, if I could not fathom it and analyze it with the most complete lucidity. I should, in fact, be a reasonable man laboring under a hallucination. Some unknown disturbance must have been excited in my brain. One of those disturbances which physiologists of the present day try to note and to fix precisely, and that disturbance must have caused a profound gulf in my mind and in the order and logic of my ideas. Similar phenomena occur in dreams, and lead us through the most unlikely phantasmagoria, without causing us any surprise, because our verifying apparatus and our sense of control have gone to sleep, while our imaginative faculty wakes and works. Was it not possible that one of the imperceptible keys of the cerebral fingerboard had been paralyzed in me? Some men lose the recollection of proper names, or of verbs, or of numbers, or merely of dates, in consequence of an accident. The localization of all the avenues of thought have been accomplished nowadays. What then would there be surprising in the fact that my faculty of controlling the unreality of certain hallucinations should be destroyed for the time being? I thought of all this as I walked by the side of the water. The sun was shining brightly on the river and made earth delightful, while it filled me with love for life, for the swallows, whose swift agility is always delightful in my eyes, for the plants by the riverside, whose rustling is a pleasure to my ears. By degrees, however, an inexplicable feeling of discomfort seized me. It seemed to me as if some unknown force were numbing and stopping me, were preventing me from going further, and were calling me back. I felt that painful wish to return which comes on you when you have left a beloved invalid at home, and are seized by a presentiment that he is worse. I therefore returned despite of myself, feeling certain that I should find some bad news awaiting me, a letter or a telegram. There was nothing, however, and I was surprised and uneasy, more so than if I had had another fantastic vision. August 8. I spent a terrible evening yesterday. He does not show himself any more, but I feel that he is near me, watching me, looking at me, penetrating me, dominating me, and more terrible to me when he hides himself thus than if he were to manifest his constant and invisible presence by supernatural phenomena. However, I slept. August 9. Nothing, but I am afraid. August 10. Nothing, but what will happen tomorrow? August 11. Still nothing. I cannot stop at home with this fear hanging over me and these thoughts in my mind. I shall go away. August 12. 10 o'clock at night. All day long I have been trying to get away, and have not been able. I contemplated a simple and easy act of liberty, a carriage ride to ruin, and I have not been able to do it. What is the reason?